Chapter 829. Xue Haolang, who was already deeply shocked, almost spat out a mouthful of blood after hearing this. This was definitely a blow. A naked blow. He was so proud because of an inscription, but Bailey Hongzhuang was the one who made this inscription. He even ridiculed Bailey Hongzhuang before. Wasn't this slapping his own face? He broke his promise to everyone for Bailey Hongzhuang's inscription. At the thought of this, Xue Haolang felt a burning pain on his face. In this life, he was afraid that he would have no face to see Bailey Hongzhuang. He had never been so humiliated. Xue Haolang no longer stayed in the same place to watch the fun, otherwise, he would only be laughed at by everyone. Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi also noticed the movements of Bailey Hongzhuang and others at this moment. When they heard the content of the dispute between Bai Jingtian and others, their faces were full of shock and astonishment. The news that Bailey Hongzhuang was not only a cultivator but also an alchemist had already shocked them greatly. Now there was the news that Bailey Hongzhuang was an inscription master. What was going on? Did Bailey Hongzhuang start learning since she was in her mother's womb? As the principal of the college, they had seen many excellent students, but they had never seen a student as abnormal as Bailey Hongzhuang. With the identity of Bai Jingtian and others, it was naturally impossible to lie, because there was no need at all. For a time, Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi were somewhat envious of the Kanglan College. Originally, the Kanglan College was already powerless to reverse the situation. They didn't expect that they would recruit such a genius student as Bailey Hongzhuang. With one person's strength to turn the tide, could it be this was God's will? The surprise in Huan Chuyo's heart was no less than Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi. For a long time, he only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was an alchemist, but he had never heard that she was quite accomplished in inscription. Bailey Hongzhuang had hidden herself too deeply. He didn't even dare to imagine what kind of existence Bailey Hongzhuang's master was. To nurture a disciple like Bailey Hongzhuang, the amount of energy and resources spent must be enormous. Xia Jiqing and the others also had an unbelievable look in their eyes. They were so familiar with Hongzhuang, but they never knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was an inscription master. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's performance at the Wubao Pavilion had shocked them, and Bailey Hongzhuang had an understanding of inscription techniques, they had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was an inscription master. Because this was too inconceivable. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had given them so many inscriptions yesterday, they still hadn't thought about it. However, this inconceivable situation turned out to be a fact. What kind of beast was this teammate that they had known for so long? Even Mo Yunjue, who had always been calm, had a hint of surprise in his pitch-black eyes after knowing about this. Mo Yunjue's lips were slightly hooked. It seemed that he still underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the several seniors in front of her who were arguing for her, and a little helplessness appeared on her beautiful face. Several seniors. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, Bai Jingtian and the others stopped arguing and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang together. They wanted to know Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts. Facing 6 pairs of eyes staring at her, Bailey Hongzhuang could only bite the bullet and said, "Thank you seniors for your kindness, but I don't have the idea of apprenticeship." Chapter 830. Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and beautiful face was a little apologetic. In her heart, she was very clear. With her previous life's attainments in alchemy, she did not need a master at all. As for inscription, she only needed to learn from the old man in the Chaos Ring. Whether it was Chu Jiao and others or Bai Jingtian and others, they had all taken root in the Qing dynasty. And it was impossible for her to stay in the Qing dynasty, not to mention that she did not have a good impression of the Qing dynasty. The performance of Nangong Yujin and Nangong Xiujie had already made her very sick. She would leave the Qing dynasty after the end of the college tournament. Therefore, it was impossible for her to become a disciple here. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bai Jingtian, Ji Yanma and Qin Qingwu's faces all showed a smile. Bailey girl, you did the right thing. Bai Jingtian praised. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She did not understand what Bai Jingtian meant. Chu Jiao and the others also frowned. In their opinion, as long as they were willing to accept disciples, no one would refuse. Bailey Hongzhuang refused so cleanly. The people who were originally envious of Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was a fool after hearing her answer. Bailey Hongzhuang actually gave up such a good opportunity. Apart from a fool, who else would refuse? Bailey Hongzhuang is too arrogant. She chose to give up such a good opportunity. She will definitely regret it in the future. In my opinion, she is simply arrogant. She doesn't know how stupid she is. This is also a good thing. This kind of guy is not worthy of the care of Master Chun. The cultivators of Lingyin College gloated. Originally, they were already envious of Bailey Hongzhuang's good luck. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang gave up this opportunity, they were still in the same position. However, Bai Jingtian's next words made everyone stunned again, and their faces became uglier than before. Little Bailey girl's inscription technique is so exquisite that even the three of us are unable to be her master. We are only friends of the same generation. Bai Jingtian glanced at Chu Jiao and the other two. The three of you still want to be Bailey's master? What are you trying to do? Chu Jiao and the other two were stunned. In their opinion, even if Bailey Hongzhuang was a genius, her performance in inscription was at most on par with alchemy. Now, Bai Jingtian actually said that Bailey Hongzhuang's inscription technique was on the same level as theirs. Then, just how fierce was Bailey Hongzhuang's inscription technique? Although Bai Jingtian and the other two old men had strange tempers, they knew that Bai Jingtian and the others never lied. Since they said so, then it was the truth. At this moment, Chu Jiao and the other two were no longer displeased by Bailey Hongzhuang's rejection. Bailey Hongzhuang herself was already a master in inscription. How could they accept Bailey Hongzhuang as a disciple? They could only be treated as equals with Bailey Hongzhuang. Lin Hao still felt that this matter was too unbelievable. He couldn't help but ask, "Old Ji, is what old Bai said true?" Ji Yanma nodded without hesitation. Yes, the problem that has been troubling us a few days ago was solved by Bailey girl. Chapter 831. For a time, the way everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang changed again. Bailey Hongzhuang could be called an inscription master at her age. How could there be such an abnormal person in the world? Bailey Hongzhuang did not expect that Ji Yunma and others would misunderstand her. In fact, she was just a beginner in the inscription liquid configuration. She was just a beginner in drawing inscriptions. Ji Yunma and others were debating about the configuration of the inscription liquid that day. She had been learning from the old man in the chaos ring for so long, but she had only mastered the configuration of the inscription liquid. Because the configuration of the inscription liquid was the work of drawing the inscription, the old man in the chaos ring obviously intended to let Bailey Hongzhuang learn from the basics. Who would have thought that such a misunderstanding would occur? Elder Ji, it's not what you said. My inscription technique is actually... Before Bailey Hongzhuang could finish her words, Ji Yunma had already said directly, "Now you should know how strong Bailey Hongzhuang's inscription technique is, right? As long as she studies inscription technique wholeheartedly, her future will be limitless." Hearing this, Chu Jiao and the other two looked at each other. They were amazed by Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in alchemy. However, they could not refute everything Ji Yunma said. Bailey Hongzhuang's inscription technique was the direction of development. Actually, my inscription technique is not so good. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but say. However, at this moment, no one would believe what Bailey Hongzhuang said. They just thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was being modest. Bailey girl, don't be modest. It just so happens that we old guys have a few questions about inscription technique to ask you. If you have nothing to do now, would you like to go to the Wubao Pavilion with us? Qin Qingwu was full of smiles. They came to Bailey Hongzhuang this time to discuss inscription technique. Inscription technique was like this. It was easy to get into a dead end when one person studied it alone. Only when everyone was together could they open up ideas. With Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, she would definitely be able to bring them a great harvest. Old Qin, my inscription technique is really not that good, Bailey Hongzhuang said helplessly. If they were talking about the configuration of the inscription fluid, then it was fine. But if they were talking about how to draw the inscription, then she was really a beginner. Little girl, you're being too modest. Bai Jingtian chuckled. He did not believe what Bailey Hongzhuang said at all. He turned around and said to Chu Jiao and the others, "We have some questions to ask Bailey Hongzhuang, so we'll take our leave first." Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't stop Bai Jingtian and the other two's enthusiasm. No matter how she tried to explain herself, Bai Jingtian and the other two obviously believed that she was hiding her strength. Bailey Hongzhuang felt helpless. She was telling the truth, yet no one believed her. As Bailey Hongzhuang was pulled away by Bai Jingtian and the other two, only Xia Jiqing and the others were left in a mess. The students of Lingyin College only felt that the world was crazy. Bailey Hongzhuang was actually an inscription master. How could they endure this? The alchemy competition came to an end, but Huan Chuyu obviously would not let go of the existence of Wei Hanyun. He would definitely not let go of this point. Therefore, the three principals discussed for a long time. When Huan Chuyu came out, there was a satisfied smile on his face. Obviously, the three principals must have reached a certain agreement. Chapter 832. When Bailey Hongzhuang came back from Wubao Pavilion, she was already surrounded by Xia Jiqing and the others. Feeling the unfriendly eyes of Xia Jiqing and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask, "What are you going to do?" Xia Jiqing smiled and squinted her eyes. "Hongzhuang, you have hidden it too deeply. A large group of us were kept in the dark by you. If it weren't for Master Bai and the others, we don't know when we would have gotten the news." Zhang Yunfeng followed. "You didn't ask me." Bailey Hongzhuang innocently spread her hands. She never intended to hide it, but she would not deliberately tell everyone that she was an inscription master. That would be showing off. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's innocent appearance, everyone was helpless. Who would think of asking such a question? It doesn't matter. Anyway, you are wrong to hide it from us. We are very vengeful. Xia Jiqing smiled. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xia Jiqing and the others one by one, and slowly said, "So, are you going to return my inscription to me?" As soon as these words came out, the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others changed a bit, and they immediately took a step back. "It's getting late, I'd better go back and cultivate." Xia Jiqing took the lead to slip away. She had already used the inscription that Hongzhuang gave her. "Jiqing is right, I'll go back and cultivate." Zhang Yunfeng also slipped away. They had already thanked her. How could they return such a treasure to Bailey Hongzhuang? Soon, everyone had left, and only Gong Shaoqing was still standing in the same place. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly raised, silently asking Gong Shaoqing. Did Gong Shaoqing want to return the inscription to her? "I'm going back to rest. I have to participate in the finals tomorrow." Leaving a sentence, Gong Shaoqing also disappeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle when she saw this. She was truly happy to be able to meet such a group of friends. The next day, as soon as the sun rose, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up one after another. Today was the finals of the cultivator competition. At the same time, it was also the most important round of the interschool competition. After everyone had gathered, Huan Chuyu led everyone towards the direction of the royal family's battle arena. The final match would be held in the royal family's martial arts arena and was the focus of attention. The emperor of the Qing dynasty would also be there in person, as well as the royal family and powerful people. Ordinary commoners no longer had the qualifications to watch this competition. It was precisely because of this that everyone attached great importance to this competition. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on Gong Xiaoqing as a look of pleasant surprise appeared on her pretty face. Gong Xiaoqing, you broke through? She could clearly feel that Gong Xiaoqing's aura was much stronger than before. He had clearly broken through to the Xiantian realm from the late stage of the mysterious heaven realm. Gong Xiaoqing nodded slightly. Fortunately, I just broke through. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Gong Xiaoqing deeply. She knew how important this final was to Gong Xiaoqing. From the moment Dongfang Yu suffered a blow, Gong Xiaoqing's heart had been suppressed to the extreme. Taking this opportunity to finally break through to the Xiantian realm, it would be of great help to today's final. Chapter 833. Cui Haoyan looked at Gong Xiaoqing in amazement. He had always wanted to compete with Gong Xiaoqing, but he did not expect that Gong Xiaoqing had broken through to the Xiantian realm earlier than him. Although he had not stepped into the Xiantian realm, he understood that the gap between the mysterious realm and the red realm was not small. It seemed that he had to improve his strength as soon as possible. He did not want to be defeated by Gong Xiaoqing. Bailey Hongzhuang, didn't you also break through to the third level of the red realm? Lu Huaiyan turned around with a smile. He was in a good mood when he saw that the students could make such progress. The other students could not see it, but as a teacher, he could see the progress of Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Xiaoqing at a glance. It seemed that the two of them attached great importance to the finals. It was because of this that they could break through under such circumstances. As Lu Huaiyan's voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would break through again. Hongzhuang, your speed of improvement is too fast. It's a blow to us. Zhang Yunfeng looked helpless. Bailey Hongzhuang was the youngest among them, but she did not expect her cultivation to be the highest. It was a blow to them. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. It's all thanks to the elemental energy fruit that I got in the ruins. Otherwise, I would not have made such great progress. With her talent in cultivation, the speed of her cultivation was not slow. It was just that the time she cultivated was too short. There was still a long way to go to catch up with some people. Zhang Yunfeng and the others smiled. They knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was being modest. For Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to reach this realm, the monument naturally gave her a lot of help, but it was also inseparable from her own efforts. Under the leadership of Huan Chuyu, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally arrived at the Royal Battle Arena. But after seeing the spectacular scene of the Royal Battle Arena, everyone's eyes flashed with amazement. The royal family's martial arts arena was similar to a huge arena. In the center was a huge square martial arts arena made of extremely hard rocks and surrounded by railings. Near the railing, Bailey Hongzhuang could clearly sense a faint energy fluctuation. Clearly, there was a protective barrier around the railing. Once the shockwaves on the stage became too large and became a threat, the protective barrier would be activated immediately to ensure that the spectators would not be affected. Around the martial arts stage was a circular, stair-like platform. All the spectators were seated on this stair-like platform to ensure that everyone could clearly see the situation on the martial arts stage. At this moment, the viewing platform was already filled with spectators. Such a lineup could only be described as spectacular. After seeing this scene, Xia Jiqing and the others had a look of amazement on their faces. The royal family of the Qing dynasty is really something. This martial arts arena is really spectacular. Bai Junyu exclaimed. Gong Xiaoqing glanced at the martial arts arena coldly. This feeling is really like watching a monkey play. Bailey Hongzhuang did not speak, but she also agreed with Gong Xiaoqing's words. Now the people sitting in the stands were the dignitaries of the Qing dynasty. In the eyes of these people, the finals were just a show. Chapter 834. Looking around, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that Emo Yunjue was sitting in the stands. He was dressed in a black robe with a silver embroidered chrysanthemum. He sat quietly in the crowd, completely blending in, but if one looked carefully, it seemed that he was out of place. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Mo Yunjue's lips slowly curved into a smile. This was his way of greeting. Bailey Hongzhuang returned a faint smile. Even though there were many things that she did not understand, she believed that Mo Yunjue was a friend and not an enemy. Cui Haoyan and the others also noticed where Mo Yunjue was sitting and waved to Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue was their only friend in the Qing dynasty. The teams of the 3 academies had arrived today, but only the 4 people who had entered the finals were participating in the competition. However, the members of the royal family of the Qing dynasty had not yet arrived, including Nangong Aochen, who had been praised by everyone. The royal family of the Qing dynasty is really arrogant. The finals are about to start and they still haven't appeared. Do they like to use this kind of show to prove their superiority? Blackie tilted its head. What it hated the most was the pride that came from the bones of the royal family. No matter when and where, they were always the last to appear, as if this was the only way to prove how noble their identity was. The royal family has always had a bad habit, not to mention that the Qing dynasty is a big country. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. This kind of waiting was within her expectations. Even if the Fengbo country was a small country, the royal family was still the last to appear. Isn't it just a royal family? What's so great about it? Xiaobai curled her lips. It was just a royal family, but they were so arrogant. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened a little. If someone heard Xiaobai's remarks, they would be shocked. The royal family of a big country was an extraordinary existence. However, she also understood Xiaobai's thoughts. In fact, she had never taken the royal family seriously in her previous life. With the power of the Bailey family, she could destroy an entire dynasty with a single thought. Of course, in this life, she didn't care about all of this, but she didn't have that kind of power for the time being. White Lion was nestled in Bailey Hongzhuang's arms, but its lively eyes were constantly looking around. It was a pity that it didn't have a chance to fight even though it was so brilliant. However, it was said that Nangong Aochen also had a demon pet. In this way, it might have a chance to go on stage. At the thought of this, Baisher could not help but feel excited. It finally had a chance to show off its might openly. Normally, that group of ignorant idiots always treated it as a demonic beast that was only for viewing purposes. What a joke. It was the Beast King, all right. It wanted to take advantage of today to let these guys know how powerful it was. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Baisher's hair. She knew that this little guy could no longer hold back the idea of wanting to show off. Speaking of which, Baisher had been misunderstood by everyone as the Beast King. This little guy must be very unconvinced. If there was a chance, it was time to correct Baisher's name. Huan Chuyu had already met up with Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi, but from Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi's faces, the arrogance and disdain from yesterday could no longer be seen. Chapter 835. However, the impact had already been made. Even if Wei Hanyun had disappeared from their sight, some people had already known the truth of this matter. As a result, the reputation of Lingyin College and Beihai College had also been affected. Lu Jingqi had already recovered. At this moment, she was looking at Xia Jiqing with resentment. She was already resentful of Xia Jiqing, and now she hated Xia Jiqing even more. However, her strength was not Xia Jiqing's opponent, so she could only use such a look to express her anger. In this regard, Xia Jiqing did not care about it. A simple sentence made Lu Jingqi speechless. Loser. Xia Jiqing said without looking at Lu Jingqi. Obviously, the current Lu Jingqi was no longer a threat to her. She simply did not want to look at her. The crowd did not wait long before the emperor of the Qing dynasty, Nangong Uji, had already walked over with the crowd. Everyone present stood up and saluted him. Nangong Uji was about 45 years old. His handsome and cold face was filled with the majesty of the emperor. His eyes were sharp and wise. It was as if his gaze was full of infinite power. Even if there was a faint smile on his face, it still made people unable to relax. The momentum that he had built over the years had emerged with his every move. The bright yellow robe was like a dazzling light, causing everyone to feel awe in their hearts. Next to Nangong Uji, Nangong Yujin and Nangong Yuer also appeared. In addition to the two of them, there was also an imposing man who was particularly eye-catching. The man was wearing a light yellow luxurious brocade. The auspicious totems woven with golden threads were all over it. A strong noble aura spread out. Obviously, this man was the crown prince of the Qing dynasty, Nangong Aochin. Nangong Aochin's face was handsome and cold. Perhaps because of his identity as the crown prince, Nangong Aochin's face always showed a bit of seriousness. However, this may be his manly side. The eyes of many women present were attracted to Nangong Aochin. Nangong Aochin could be said to be the man in the hearts of all the women in the Qing dynasty. He was the pride of the entire Qing dynasty. Almost all women hoped that one day they could be fancied by Nangong Aochin. However, Nangong Aochin was completely different from Nangong Yujin. Nangong Yujin was a master of wine and women. Nangong Aochin spent almost all of his time and energy on business. He didn't care about women. It was precisely because of Nangong Aochin's carelessness that countless women wanted to throw themselves into his arms. This Nangong Aochin looks really good. He's handsome, and you can tell at a glance that he's not the same as Nangong Yujin. Zhang Yunfeng sized up Nangong Aochin. She had heard of Nangong Aochin's resounding reputation, and today, she finally saw him in person. Cui Haoyan raised his eyebrows and put his arm around Zhang Yunfeng's shoulder. What? Are you interested in Nangong Aochin? As soon as he said that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at Cui Haoyan. Ever since the demonic beast tide incident, Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyan had become a couple. However, they had never seen Cui Haoyan say such explicit words. Chapter 836. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces showed a smile as they looked at Zhang Yunfeng with ridicule. Why are you looking at me like that? Zhang Yunfeng's cheeks were red and she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and shrugged. I just think that you look better today, so I want to look at you more. Xia Jiqing also laughed. This is the first time I have seen you so blatantly showing off your love. Yunfeng, in my opinion, you can't say that other men are good in front of Cui Haoyan, otherwise Cui Haoyan will be jealous. As soon as these words came out, Zhang Yunfeng's face was even redder as she looked at Xia Jiqing with shame. As for Cui Haoyan, he looked as if he had already thrown caution to the wind, and he didn't care at all. Ha! Everyone laughed. For Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyan, they sincerely wished them well. Zhang Yunfeng punched Cui Haoyan with her fist. Cui Haoyan's appearance really made her not know what to do. While everyone was laughing, Nangong Oji had already sat down in his seat. His handsome and majestic face showed a faint smile. The exchange meeting of the three colleges is held here. As the king of the Qing dynasty, I am also very honored. I hope that the contestants who enter the finals can perform well. Nangong Oji simply said a few words and sat down. The purpose of him coming here today was to see the performance of Nangong Aochin. The entire royal arena was very quiet. It was not until Nangong Oji sat down that the atmosphere eased a little. With Nangong Oji here, there was always a trace of restraint and rigor. Nangong Aochin said a few words beside Nangong Oji and then went to the team of Lingyin College with Nangong Yujin and Nangong Yu. Today they were not standing here representing the members of the royal family, but the students of Lingyin College. I don't know if Nangong Aochin has found the murderer who assassinated Nangong Xiujie? Xia Jiqing suddenly thought of Nangong Xiujie and couldn't help but ask. Everyone thought for a moment. Now that Nangong Xiujie's death was very sensitive in the Qing dynasty, they couldn't see any clues from Nangong Oji's face. I don't think that person would dare to assassinate Nangong Xiujie if he didn't have a good plan. Bai Junyu said slowly, I can't see any sadness on the face of the emperor of the Qing dynasty. The assassination of Nangong Xiujie is already a great shame for the royal family of the Qing dynasty. The emperor of the Qing dynasty will naturally not reveal it. Gong Xiaoqing's eyes flashed with the light of wisdom as he pondered. However, with how heartless the imperial family is, perhaps he doesn't even care about the death of a pretense. Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. The cold-bloodedness of the members of the royal family was well known. Countless people had assassinated their own brothers and sisters for the sake of the throne. It was not easy to grow up safely in the royal family. The number of princes and princesses of Nangong Oji was bound to be not small. The death of Nangong Xiujie would only make him feel a pity and temporary sadness. It wouldn't have much impact. This was the sorrow of the royal family. Jian Qingqiu slowly stood up and glanced at the people around him before he spoke. Today is the finals of the 3 Great Academies Inter-School Tournament. There are a total of 4 participants. Lingyin College, Nangong Aochen. Beihai College, Shaolanmei. Chapter 837. Although this result had been widely spread in the Qing dynasty 2 days ago, many people still didn't know about it. At this moment, when they heard that the least optimistic Kanglin College actually had 2 places, everyone couldn't help but be surprised. In the past, Lingyin College had always been the best. Now, only Nangong Aochen from Lingyin College had entered the finals, and he had entered without fighting. For a time, the eyes that fell on the cultivators of Kanglin College were obviously a little more, but they were still full of confidence. The existence of Nangong Aochen had already determined the result of the finals. Big brother, that woman is Bailey Hongzhuang. Nangong Yuer obviously still hated Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, she directly pointed at Bailey Hongzhuang and said to Nangong Aochen, although she was defeated by Bailey Hongzhuang, what kind of person was Nangong Aochen? As long as Nangong Aochen made a move, Bailey Hongzhuang would only be defeated. Big brother, you must avenge me. Nangong Yuer's face showed an angry look. Since she was a child, no one had dared to hurt her like that. She wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to die. Hearing this, Nangong Aochen glanced at Nangong Yuer, and then his eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. After his calm eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a flash of surprise, but he quickly returned to calmness. Big brother, this Bailey Hongzhuang's strength is indeed good, but she dared to humiliate second brother in such a way. You must teach her a lesson. Nangong Yujin also said. His relationship with Nangong Xiujie has always been very good. Although Nangong Xiujie's death had nothing to do with Bailey Hongzhuang, he could not bear to see her humiliating Nangong Xiujie like that. This debt had to be settled. However, in the face of the resentment of Nangong Yuer and Nangong Yujin, Nangong Aochen's face was still serious, but there was no flash of anger. I will defend the dignity of the royal family, but you know what you two have done. Nangong Aochen's words were full of warning. He was very clear about Nangong Yujin's personality. Since Nangong Xiujie was assassinated, he also understood what happened between Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Xiujie in the first tower. In fact, the original reason for this matter was completely caused by Nangong Xiujie. The cultivators of Kanglin College were just passive. Moreover, Dongfang Yu of the Kanglin College has not appeared so far, undoubtedly because Nangong Xiujie destroyed his self-confidence. If Nangong Xiujie had not gone too far, Bailey Hongzhuang would not have humiliated Nangong Xiujie. Listening to Nangong Aochen's reprimand, Nangong Yujin and Nangong Yuer's faces turned ugly. They are also very clear about the character of Nangong Aochen. He has always helped his own family and not his relative. It is precisely because of this that it is difficult for them to get close to Nangong Aochen. However, Bailey Hongzhuang humiliated Nangong Xiujie and humiliated the dignity of the royal family. They are afraid that Nangong Aochen will not let go of Bailey Hongzhuang. They only need to know this, and it is enough. Feeling the gaze of Nangong Aochen, Bailey Hongzhuang did not avoid it. The two eyes met in mid-air, flashing a few sparks but more indifference. Chapter 838. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood what Mo Yunjue meant when he said that Nangong Aochin was a gentleman. Nangong Aochin was probably the calmest person she had ever seen. His eyes were clear and calm, without the slightest concealment. It was like a black chrysanthemum, indifferent and fair. It seemed that the rumors of the Qing dynasty were not wrong. Nangong Aochin was indeed the best prince of the Qing dynasty. The 4 people participating in the finals will take turns to fight. The person who wins the most times will be the first in the finals. There is no time to rest during the competition, so it is best to stop when the time is right. Jian Qingqiu slowly introduced the rules of the finals to everyone. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 would play against the other 3 in turn. This was the fairest way and reduced the possibility of opportunism. Now, the 4 students will come to the stage to draw lots to determine the order of the competition. With Jian Qingqiu's voice falling, Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Shaoqing walked towards the position of the 3 principals. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly pulled out a piece of paper. There was a word written on the paper. It seemed that she was the first to participate. Bailey Hongzhuang was not worried about her number. Anyway, she would eventually fight against the 3 people one by one. It did not matter which game she would start with. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang knew that her first opponent was Gong Shaoqing, there was a hint of astonishment in her eyes. This probability was really low. When Gong Shaoqing knew that his first opponent was Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a faint smile in his eyes. No way, you 2 are actually opponents in the first game? What should I do? Xia Jiqing was stunned. The best result was that Gong Shaoqing and Bailey Hongzhuang would meet in the last game. She did not expect to meet in the first game. It was really troublesome. Cui Haoyan and others obviously did not expect such a situation. It was reasonable to say that Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Shaoqing were both students of the Kanglan College. It was naturally best not to fight. However, the inter-school competition was very valuable. If they could perform well in the inter-school competition, it would be of great help to their future. Apart from the college, everyone wanted to win the first place and become famous. In the past, the first place of the college tournament was famous and had a bright future. Many forces directly threw out olive branches. It was because of this that they could not speak. The first game, Bailey Hongzhuang of the Kanglan College against Gong Shaoqing of the Kanglan College. The loud voice of the referee clearly passed into the ears of everyone in the royal hunting ground. When everyone heard the news, their expressions became a bit more interesting. The Kanglan College's luck. The Kanglan College's luck is not good. In the first round, if they don't fight, they will not be the first time, they will be the Kanglan is the college. If we make a move, it will undoubtedly exhaust our academy's combat strength. When we fight with the other 2 academies later, we will fall into a disadvantageous position. This is truly a difficult choice. No matter what these 2 students choose, the one who will obtain first place will definitely be the crown prince. What they do is not important. Chapter 839. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was also full of thoughts. She absolutely wouldn't fight with Gong Shaoqing. This would only lower Azure Water School's chances of winning. She didn't have any thoughts about fame. If she admitted defeat, as long as she could defeat Xiao Lanmei and Nangong Aochin, Gong Shaoqing might have a chance to win. However, she didn't have absolute confidence in Nangong Aochin because his strength couldn't be underestimated. Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Shaoqing walked up the high platform under the watchful eyes of the crowd. The moment they stepped on the high platform, they were the center of attention. Curious eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Shaoqing. They all wanted to know if Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Shaoqing would fight. Let the competition begin. With a wave of his hand, the referee announced the start of the competition. Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips slightly opened, this competition, without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to finish her words, Gong Xiaoqing's voice had already sounded, "I admit defeat." When these words came out, the crowd was in an uproar. Previously, they thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Xiaoqing might not care about the overall situation and directly fight. Now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Xiaoqing were not that kind of people. Kanglan College's luck was good this time. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Gong Xiaoqing with a little surprise. She didn't expect Gong Xiaoqing to directly admit defeat. After all, this kind of honor was very important for a cultivator's future. Gong Xiaoqing's handsome face showed a bit of free and easy. In fact, when he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was also ready to admit defeat, his heart was full of shock. He was very clear that with his strength, it was impossible to win first place. Bailey Hongzhuang was the hope of Kanglan College. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang won this competition without any consumption, it would be of great help to Bailey Hongzhuang. Although he valued his own future, as a member of the Kanglan school, he hoped to help the school out of its current predicament. If even Bailey Hongzhuang was willing to give up for this, there was no need to mention him. Seeing the actions of the two Bailey Hongzhuang, the hearts of the Tsanglan School students were filled with emotion. They clearly understood that when the two were ready to admit defeat, they understood what they had to give up. At this moment, their hearts were filled with admiration for Gong Xiaoqing. Although he had admitted defeat, Gong Xiaoqing was a well-deserved hero of Tsanglan College. Lu Huiyan and Huan Chuyo's gazes were also slightly complicated. However, based on the current situation, this was indeed the best solution. The referee was not surprised by this result. In fact, in the previous inter-academy competitions, there were quite a few people who chose to admit defeat when cultivators from the same academy fought against each other. Kanglan College Bailey Hongzhuang wins. Following the referee's announcement, Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Xiaoqing looked at each other and smiled. The two walked down the stage together. In this regard, the spectators didn't feel the slightest bit wrong. There was nothing to see in a competition between students from the same academy. It was also very good to have the second round early. Nangong Aochen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a trace of surprise in his eyes. He had a certain understanding of the situation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Gong Xiaoqing. Chapter 840. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was obviously not pretending. She was really ready to give up. As a crown prince, he knew too much about interest dispute. The first place in the college tournament was a real glory. Bailey Hongzhuang was willing to give up her original advantage. It could be seen that she did not value fame and fortune that much. As he learned, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang humiliated Nangong Xiujie was not for herself, but for Dongfang Yu. It seemed that this Bailey Hongzhuang was really very special. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Xiujie returned to the team of Kanglan College, Cui Haoyan and the others looked at the two with admiration. Gong Xiaoqing, although I have always wanted to compete with you, this time, I admire you. Cui Haoyan directly gave Gong Xiaoqing a thumbs up. In terms of strength, Gong Xiaoqing had always been his opponent, but he really admired Gong Xiaoqing's mind. You are our hero. Xia Jiqing also gave a thumbs up. At this time, all the words seemed very pale, but Gong Xiaoqing was a well-deserved hero in their minds. Lu Qinyue also walked to Gong Xiaoqing's side. She did not say anything, but Gong Xiaoqing had always been a hero in her mind. Gong Xiaoqing's choice today also made her understand how broad the mind of the man she had always admired was. Feeling the eyes of everyone, Gong Xiaoqing's cold face was still cold. I just don't want other colleges to take advantage of me. Although he said this, everyone clearly felt that Gong Xiaoqing's cold face was a bit unnatural. This guy actually felt embarrassed? The next moment, everyone looked at each other and smiled. As long as they understood in their hearts, it was enough. Lu Huiyan's eyes also flashed with appreciation and relief. It was really a blessing for Kanglan College to have such a group of harmonious and sensible students. Lu Jingqi and the others looked at the harmonious atmosphere of Kanglan College. Their faces could not help but change a bit, but there was a trace of irony in their eyes. Songlan School's practitioners really like to pretend to be generous. Gong Shaoqing is only pretending to be generous on the surface, but in his heart, I'm afraid he is depressed. Lu Jingqi sneered coldly. As cultivators, they all knew how important the platform of the inter-school tournament was. No one would be willing to give it up. If Gong Shaoqing had not been forced to give up due to the situation, he would not have given up. God knows why they like to pretend to be great. Isn't Bailey Hongzhuang the same? Lu Jinglin sneered. She had never seen such a generous cultivator. Xiao Lanmei's eyes slowly fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. In fact, he had never seen a friendship like Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He believed that everything Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had done was not a pretense, because the trust between companions was not something that could be faked. It could only be said that the students of Kanglan College had a kind of cohesion that other colleges did not have. What they valued was not interests but feelings. Perhaps many people would say that the practitioners of Kanglan College were too naive, but in fact, this kind of feelings were the most important. Chapter 841. Listening to the ridicule of Lu Jinglin and her sister, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not care about this matter at all. These two people were just saying that the grapes were sour. They wanted to use such words to stimulate them, but it did not have any effect on them. The second game, Nangong Aochen of Lingyin College versus Xiao Lanmei of Beihai College. As the voice of the referee fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but look at Xiao Lanmei and Nangong Aochen. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes flashed. According to the performance of Xiao Lanmei in the competition, Xiao Lanmei was already a powerful cultivator. She just did not know what the situation would be if Xiao Lanmei faced Nangong Aochen. Although from Mo Yunjue's mouth, Bailey Hongzhuang had already learned that Nangong Aochen was at the 5th level of the Red Realm, but for cultivators, cultivation was only one aspect, the specific combat effectiveness was unknown. Now that Xiao Lanmei and Nangong Aochen had taken the lead, she could also learn more about Nangong Aochen through the situation of the two people. Just as Xiao Lanmei was about to go on stage, Mo Xinghai's eyes fell on Xiao Lanmei and slowly said, "Xiao Lanmei, you should know what to do, right?" Xiao Lanmei looked at Mo Xinghai indifferently. His deep and calm eyes flashed with a deep light. "What if I don't do this?" Hearing this, Mo Xinghai's face was dignified and serious, and his voice was low. "You should know the consequences if you don't do this." Xiao Lanmei's pupils changed. His eyes were filled with forbearance and anger. He walked past Mo Xinghai but didn't say anything. Mo Xinghai and Duan Yingwu looked at Xiao Lanmei's back as he walked on the high platform. Their faces also had an unspeakable depth. They believed that Xiao Lanmei should make the right choice. At the same time, Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi also looked at each other. Song Hongxi nodded without a trace, and Jian Qingqiu's face relaxed a little. Soon, Xiao Lanmei and Nangong Aochen stood on the high platform. Xiao Lanmei was cold and arrogant, while Nangong Aochen was noble and serious. Both of them were outstanding figures among the younger generation. At this moment, the two of them were facing each other, and a dignified atmosphere filled the air. Mo Xinghai and Duan Yingwu's eyes were fixed on Xiao Lanmei's body. Their hands were unconsciously clenched. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed the change in the expressions of the two mentors of Beihai College. It seemed a bit strange. Could it be that Beihai College was going to play some tricks after suffering a loss yesterday? After the two of them stood still, the referee waved his hand and said, "Begin." As soon as the referee finished speaking, Nangong Aochen's eyes became sharp. The origin energy in his body whizzed out, and a wave of pressure quietly spread out. Xiao Lanmei's eyes fell on Nangong Aochen's body. His dark eyes flashed with hesitation, unwillingness, anger, and other emotions, until finally calmed down. Nangong Aochen looked at Xiao Lanmei with some doubts. He did not know why Xiao Lanmei was standing in the same place. The next moment, Xiao Lanmei's voice sounded, "I admit defeat." As soon as these words came out, the audience was in an uproar, and a stunned gaze gathered on Xiao Lanmei's body. Chapter 842. What's going on? The two students in the first round are from Kanglan College, but the students of Beihai College actually admitted defeat, so they don't have to fight anymore. In my opinion, it must be that the strength of the Crown Prince is too strong. The students of Kanglan College simply do not have the courage to fight with the Crown Prince. However, this is also a wise decision. The Crown Prince is definitely the first. This Xiao Lanmei wants to preserve his strength and win the second or even third place. Xiao Lanmei listened to the discussions of the people in the stands. His deep eyes were covered with a layer of shadow. His fists were unconsciously closed, his knuckles were white. After noticing Xiao Lanmei's actions, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that Emo Xinghai and Xiao Lanmei had relaxed, and immediately understood. It seemed that Xiao Lanmei was not willing to give up, but he was forced to do so. It seems that this should be a deal between Beihai College and Lingyin College. Xiao He slowly said, her eyes constantly looking at Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi. Huan Chuyu was obviously surprised when he saw Xiao Lanmei admit defeat, but Song Hongxi and Jian Qingqiu were not surprised. Obviously, these two people had known about it. This is really a good deal. Xiao Bai chuckled. Lingyin College will help Beihai College win the first place in the alchemy competition, and Beihai College will help Lingyin College win the first place in the cultivator competition. As a result, Kanglan College will have no hope. Bailey Hongzhuang's black phoenix eyes flashed with wisdom and complexity. Her eyes fell on Xiao Lanmei's body, revealing some sympathy and emotion. This may be an excellent deal for the two colleges, but they completely ignored the thoughts of the students themselves. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt that the students of Beihai College were somewhat pitiful. For Song Hongxi and others, the students were just chess pieces in their hands. They simply did not care how important this competition was for the cultivators, they only cared about the interests of the college itself. At this moment, admitting defeat was a shame for Xiao Lanmei. In the future, everyone would say that he was afraid of Nangong Aochen, so he directly admitted defeat. This was a stain. With Xiao Lanmei's arrogant temperament, this was simply a stain that he could not accept. It was because of this that Xiao Lanmei was struggling. Bailey Hongzhuang was somewhat surprised. She didn't know what kind of weakness Beihai College had to make Xiao Lanmei choose to admit defeat. However, as a vice principal and mentor, the style of Tsang Lan College was really despicable. Xiao Lanmei actually chose to admit defeat. I think Xiao Lanmei's strength is very strong. It is said that he has reached the second stage of the Red Realm. If it was me, I would have fought with him. It is too spineless to admit defeat like this. Bai Junyu was speechless and shook his head. He was very optimistic about Xiao Lanmei before. He did not expect that Xiao Lanmei would make such a choice at the critical moment. It was really disappointing. Jiqing, what do you think? Bai Junyu nudged Xia Jiqing and asked aloud. Xia Jiqing also looked at Xiao Lanmei and curled her lips. I think the level of the students of Beihai College is really not that good. Apart from their mouths, there is nothing good about them. Chapter 843. Xia Jiqing's words were not hidden at all. Anyway, the cultivators of Beihai College had long hated each other. Since there was an opportunity to ridicule them, she would not waste it. This could also make the two sisters completely shut up. After listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Lu Jinglin and her sister were also angry, but in the current situation, they really could not refute. After Xiao Lanmei walked down the high platform, Lu Jinglin looked at Xiao Lanmei with eyes full of puzzlement. Xiao Lanmei, why did you choose to admit defeat? For a long time, Xiao Lanmei had been the object of her admiration. Although Xiao Lanmei was cold, rarely spoke, and did not pay much attention to her, as long as Xiao Lanmei was strong enough, this was his greatest charm. However, she did not understand why Xiao Lanmei chose to give up at such an important time today. The strongest person in her mind was now defeated. This was not a matter of strength, but a matter of confidence. You are not only representing yourself, but also the dignity of the college. How can you choose to admit defeat? Lu Jingqi was obviously not as polite as Lu Jinglin. If it was not because of Xiao Lanmei's actions, they would not be laughed at by others. Xiao Lanmei looked at Lu Jingqi coldly. He did not speak, but the murderous aura in his eyes was amazingly strong. Seeing Xiao Lanmei's eyes, Lu Jingqi's face suddenly changed, and her eyes flashed with horror. It was the first time she saw such a terrifying gaze. Xiao Lanmei seemed to want to kill her. The strong murderous aura made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. The words stuck in her throat could not be said. Xiao Lanmei retracted his gaze and returned to his original position. His cold face was filled with coldness at this time. Lu Jingqi took 2 steps back and did not dare to say anything. Xiao Lanmei was really too scary. Emo Xinghai and Duan Yingwu looked at Xiao Lanmei and did not know what to say. In the face of the college's interests, nothing else had any meaning. This was what Xiao Lanmei had to bear. Although Nangong Aochen was slightly surprised that Xiao Lanmei chose to admit defeat, he did not take it to heart. In his eyes, whether it was Xiao Lanmei or the 2 from Kanglin College, they were not his opponents. Xiao Lanmei's choice to admit defeat at this moment was very wise. Otherwise, after this battle, Xiao Lanmei's strength would be affected, and he would be at a disadvantage against the 2 from the Kanglin College. Huan Chuyo's eyes quietly fell on Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi. When Xiao Lanmei announced his surrender, he already understood that there must be something fishy. Now that Lingyin College and Beihai College had joined forces, they were willing to do anything to put Kanglin College at the bottom. However, he did not expect that Beihai College would directly ask Xiao Lanmei to admit defeat. It was a pity for Xiao Lanmei. Thinking of this, Huan Chuyu felt a little nervous. Nangong Aochen and Xiao Lanmei's strength were not weak. Bailey Hongzhuang had a chance to win against Xiao Lanmei, but against Nangong Aochen, she was clearly inferior. As a result, the situation of Lingyin College being the first place could not be changed. Huan Chuyo's expression was complicated, but he eventually regained his calm. No matter what, it wasn't easy for the Azure Water School to reach this point in the tournament. Chapter 844. Although Xiao Lanmei's admission of defeat caused an uproar, with the start of the 3rd match, the entire Royal Arena was quiet again. The 3rd match, Nangong Aochen against Gong Shaoqing. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes fell on Gong Shaoqing. This was a battle without any suspense. Even if Gong Shaoqing successfully broke through to the Red Realm, he was still inferior to Nangong Aochen, who was at the 5th level of the Red Realm. This was not because Gong Shaoqing was not strong enough, but because Nangong Aochen was too abnormal. After all, whether it was the cultivation conditions or the gap between them, they were not as good as Nangong Aochen, which caused such a gap. Gong Shaoqing, come on! Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a faint smile. Even if the result could not be changed, the competition was also a way to gain experience. Fighting with the strong often allowed them to better understand the power of the strong, which was of great help to their next cultivation. In her previous life, she often competed with the masters of her family. From the initial defeat to the later days, this kind of progress often gave people a sense of accomplishment. For a cultivator, the mentality was extremely important. Failure was not terrible. Every cultivator would fail on their way forward. The terrible thing was that they did not dare to face failure. Come on. As long as the momentum of our Kanglin College is good. Cui Haoyan also encouraged. In this case, they were also very embarrassed. They knew that they would fail, but they wanted to encourage Gong Shaoqing, so they could only say such words. Feeling the goodwill of the crowd, Gong Shaoqing's iceberg-like face also melted a little. Don't worry, I will do my best. Since coming to Lingyin College and seeing the strength of Nangong Xiujie and the others, he understood that although he was quite famous in Kanglin College, there was still a big gap between him and the other cultivators. In fact, it was not without reason that Kanglin College had been last in the last two college tournament. In terms of hard conditions, there was a big gap between Kanglin College and the other two colleges. If it were not for Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a possibility that they would be at the bottom. It would be impossible for him to help Kanglin College restore their honor. His mood had been low, helpless, and finally recovered to the calmness he had now. Falling behind wasn't scary. As long as he continued to work hard, it wasn't impossible for him to close the gap in the future. In Gong Xiaoqing's dictionary, the word give up never existed. I'm going. As soon as he finished speaking, Gong Xiaoqing walked up to the stage. Lu Qinyue looked at Gong Xiaoqing's back as he left. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. No matter what, Gong Xiaoqing would always be the hero in her heart. Nangong Aochen once again stood on the stage. Beside him, a flaming lion was glaring at Gong Xiaoqing. Oh my God, this is the Crown Prince's contracted beast, the flaming lion. I heard that the flame lion is at the 5th level of the Red Realm. Ordinary contract beasts are no match for the flame lion. Why would the Crown Prince need to do it himself? As long as the flame lion makes a move, Gong Xiaoqing will have already lost. Everyone's gaze was attracted by the majestic flame lion. They saw that the flame beast's body was covered in red fur. It was the same as the flame lion, possessing the fire attribute. Its attack power was also very strong. Chapter 845. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze also fell on the flaming lion. The flaming lion was a very outstanding species among the monster pets, but it was not easy to contract one. The flaming lion cub was already very difficult to find, and it was even more difficult to seal the flaming lion cub into an egg. From this, it could be seen how rare Nangong Aochen's flaming lion cub was. It's just a cub, what's there to be proud of? Blackie curled its lips, and did not seem to care at all. It could kill this kind of guy in a matter of minutes. Xiaobai nodded. When the tiger is not at home, the monkey is king. This guy can only be proud of himself in this remote place. Bailey Hongzhuang listened to Xiao He and Xiao Bai's tone, and a faint smile appeared on her lip. These two guys were really arrogant. Master, when you fight with Nangong Aochen later, let me fight. I will kill the flaming lion in seconds. Xiao He's eyes flashed with excitement. After not fighting for so long, it was a little itchy. Although its master's strength was still not strong, it should not have anything to do with Xiao by being exposed. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to speak, the flaming lion had already protested. If anyone is going to fight, it should be me. It had been waiting for this opportunity to prove itself. Hearing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai also smiled. Speaking of which, this was a good opportunity for the flaming lion to prove itself, so they would not fight with the flaming lion. After seeing the flaming lion beside Nangong Aochen, Gong Xiaoqing's eyes also changed a little. With a slight feeling in his mind, Gong Xiaoqing knew that the flaming lion was not weak, and his heart was also a little moved. The heritage of the imperial family was indeed not something ordinary people could compare to. This flaming lion was not old, but it had already reached the 5th level of the Red Realm. Who knew how many cultivation resources were spent just to increase the flaming lion's strength? It was really rich. The battle begins. With the referee's order, Nangong Aochen and Gong Xiaoqing did not immediately start. Nangong Aochen looked at Gong Xiaoqing. According to his understanding, Gong Xiaoqing was still in the late stage of the mysterious heaven realm, and was not on the same level as him. Once they started, it would be a complete crush, so he was not in a hurry. Since you don't have a contract beast, my contract beast will not fight. With such an absolute difference in strength, there was no need for the flaming lion to participate in the battle. Whatever. Gong Xiaoqing's attitude was as cold as ever. To him, whether Nangong Ouchen used a contract beast or not, it didn't matter. Listening to Gong Xiaoqing's answer, Nangong Ouchen was a little surprised. Logically speaking, in Ouchen to Gong Xiaoqing's Gong Ouchen's Xiao Hongzhuang's s Gong s's he was Gong Ouchen Lion's s long s it Xiaoqing. Gong Xiaoqing didn't hesitate at all. He knew that even if he used all his strength to deal with Nangong Ouchen, he wouldn't be able to achieve much because the difference in strength between the two was too great. However, even so, he would still do his best. As long as he could consume more of Nangong Ouchen's strength, it would be easier for Bailey Hongzhuang to deal with Nangong Ouchen. Chapter 846. Seeing that Gong Xiaoqing was so straightforward, Nangong Ouchen didn't waste any more time. The origin energy in his body instantly surged out, and the vigorous origin energy gushed out without holding back. Taking a step forward, Nangong Ouchen suddenly blasted out a fist. The fierce fist broke through the air and brought out a burst of sonic booms. Feeling the power of Nangong Ouchen's fist, Gong Xiaoqing's heart trembled. Although he already knew the difference between their realms, he still couldn't help but be amazed when Nangong Ouchen made his move. This seemingly simple fist gave him a feeling that it was difficult to resist. If he met force with force, his hand would be crippled. Gong Xiaoqing's figure jumped and dodged Nangong Ouchen's fist without hesitation. At the same time, his fist struck towards Nangong Ouchen's chest in a tricky arc. Nangong Ouchen's speed was also very fast. He dodged to the side and attacked Gong Xiaoqing again. Looking at the battle between Gong Xiaoqing and Nangong Ouchen, the crowd only felt that this was a game of cat and mouse. What the hell is this? Are the students of the Azure Water School turtles? They keep dodging and don't even have the courage to fight head-on. It's obvious that the Crown Prince will win this match. No matter how good Gong Xiaoqing is at dodging, once the Crown Prince finds an opportunity, he will lose without a doubt. The gap between Gong Xiaoqing and the Crown Prince is very big. The fact that he can dodge until now has already proved his strength. There were many people in the crowd with discerning eyes. From the moment Gong Xiaoqing and Nangong Ouchen's aura erupted, they already knew that this was a match with a great disparity in strength. Gong Xiaoqing couldn't meet force with force because once he did, he would lose without a doubt. Dodging was the only way. But this kind of dodging also allowed them to understand Gong Xiaoqing's fighting skills. Under limited circumstances, he could show his strength as much as possible. This was enough. Although there is a certain gap in strength between Gong Xiaoqing and the Crown Prince, he is very smart and his foundation is very solid. As long as he is given a certain amount of time, his future won't be bad. The discerning people had already seen Gong Xiaoqing's purpose and their eyes were filled with admiration. Cultivation could be improved. With Gong Xiaoqing's age, there was a lot of room for improvement in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on the high platform. Gong Xiaoqing's strength was clearly displayed, but Nangong Ouchen's strength was indeed very strong. In her view, Ouchen was indeed a gentleman. Nangong Ouchen's previous attacks wasn't fierce. He was deliberately giving Gong Xiaoqing a chance to show off. After all, it was not easy for every cultivator to reach this stage. Since Gong Xiaoqing had the guts to participate in the competition, he should be given a chance to perform. Now Gong Xiaoqing's eyes, he was in the faces, if he was a little careless, he would be defeated. Lu Qinyue's hands were intertwined together. Her pretty face was filled with worry. She was afraid that if she was not careful, Gong Xiaoqing would be seriously injured. Was Ouchen's SSSS? To Ouchen S his T, of his S. Chapter 847. Qi. A strong wind passed by, and a huge fist instantly enlarged in Gong Xiaoqing's pupils. It was too late to avoid it, and Gong Xiaoqing was full of helplessness. This match was about to end. However, the fist stopped in front of Gong Xiaoqing's forehead, and at the same time, Nangong Auchen's voice rang out. It's over. Nangong Auchen slowly retracted his fist. His face was still calm and serious. For him, defeating Gong Shaoqing was nothing to be happy about. If it wasn't for the fact that the opponent was participating in the college tournament, he wouldn't have fought with Gong Shaoqing at all. Gong Shaoqing's expression was also very indifferent. He understood Nangong Auchen's arrogance, and in fact, he was not qualified to be his opponent. However, he would not be discouraged by this. On the contrary, this would be his motivation. If you want your opponent to respect you, you must first have the qualifications to make them look at you seriously. Nangong Auchen of Lingyin College wins. The referee announced the result, and there was a burst of cheers from the entire stands. Nangong Auchen was their pride. At this moment, Nangong Auchen had defeated his opponent, and they were also surprised. Gong Shaoqing slowly walked back to the team, but Nangong Auchen was still standing on the high platform, because the next match was still him. Good! Cui Haoyan directly patted Gong Shaoqing's chest and said his admiration. In fact, if it was him, it would be impossible for him to last so long under Nangong Auchen's hands. Gong Shaoqing's defeat was glorious. Xia Jiqing and the others also smiled. Being able to come this far, they had no regret. Nangong Auchen's strength is very strong. Even if I have done my best, he still hasn't been serious. You have to be more careful. Gong Shaoqing's eyes were filled with concern. Bailey Hongzhuang was different from him. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang still had the idea of fighting. Although he felt that this possibility was very slim, it had always been a good quality to go all out on the stage. If you don't go all out, how can you know how strong you are? In fact, he had done his best, but the difference in strength between the two was too big, so it was useless for him to go all out. However, the gap between Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Auchen was smaller. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I understand. Her exquisite and beautiful face was filled with seriousness and seriousness. She had never underestimated Nangong Auchen. He must have a lot of trump cards. However, she would still do her best. Compared to Nangong Auchen, Kanglin College needed to win more. She didn't know the final result of this competition, but at the very least, she wouldn't let Nangong Auchen win so easily. Jian Qingqiu's face was full of pride. Nangong Auchen is the best student of our Lingyin College in recent years. He is really one in a million. 2 days ago, the ranking competition and the alchemy competition had already made him unhappy. It wasn't until Nangong Auchen's crushing victory that a smile appeared on his face. No matter how Kanglin College wanted to change the situation, the final victory would be Lingyin College. Although the results of the alchemy competition had a certain effect, it was completely different from the cultivator competition. Chapter 848. The third game, Nangong Auchen of Lingyin College versus Bailey Hongzhuang of Kanglin College. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. This woman with an extraordinary appearance had attracted a lot of attention as soon as she appeared in the royal family's martial arts arena. Nangong Auchen's eyes also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, and a light flashed in his eyes. He was finally going to fight with Bailey Hongzhuang. Nangong Oji also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. He also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had humiliated Nangong Xiujie. This matter has involved the face of the royal family. He did not have a good feeling about Bailey Hongzhuang, but he did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang turned out to be such a beautiful little girl. He knew that the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang did that was because Nangong Xiujie had gone too far before, but this was not within the scope of his concern. No matter who it was, as long as they did something that insulted the dignity of the royal family of the Qing dynasty, they must pay the price. When they knew that this battle was Bailey Hongzhuang's turn, Nangong Yujin and Nangong Yu's faces showed a grim smile. Bailey Hongzhuang was so arrogant before, now I want to see how she can continue to be arrogant. Nangong Yu's smile was a little proud. She already hated Bailey Hongzhuang. It just so happened that Bailey Hongzhuang had done something that hindered the dignity of the royal family. Her father had ordered her to teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson. She believed that Nangong Aochin would not disobey her father's orders. As a result, Bailey Hongzhuang would suffer today. Nangong Aochin should teach Bailey Hongzhuang a good lesson, so that she knows the immensity of heaven and earth. Nangong Yujin's eyes narrowed. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang, he was also reprimanded by his father. Nangong Xiujie, who had the best relationship with him, also died. He really hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would also disappear from this world. Let's wait for a good show. Nangong Yu-er's expression relaxed a little. The outcome of this battle had already been decided. What they needed to care about was how badly Bailey Hongzhuang would lose. Hongzhuang, come on! Xia Jiqing waved her fist and said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I will. The others also cheered for Bailey Hongzhuang. They were cheers for her. Bailey Hongzhuang of Kanglan College. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to go to the stage, Lu Huaiyan's voice sounded. Bailey Hongzhuang, although the result of this battle is important, it is not as important as you. Do you understand? Lu Huaiyan's eyes flashed with a worried light. He really appreciated and admired Bailey Hongzhuang. Cultivator, doctor, alchemist, and inscriptionist. These four identities converged on Bailey Hongzhuang. She could no longer be described as a genius. Although this battle was very important for Kanglan College, the principle of Kanglan College had always been to put the students first. The students were the most important. The existence of the college was also for the growth of the student. If the students were to pay everything for the reputation of the college, it would be putting the cart before the horse. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Lu Huaiyan and slowly revealed a smile. This is also the vice principal's intention, Lu Huaiyan said again. Chapter 849. No one knew that when Lu Huaiyan said these words, Xiao Lanmei's eyes quietly changed a bit. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked onto the stage and stood opposite Nangong Aochin. Her delicate face still showed indifference and alienation. She did not have a good impression of the members of the royal family. In fact, all the members of the royal family were a bit self-righteous. Even if Nangong Aochin showed the appearance of a gentleman, she did not feel much. Bailey Hongzhuang. Nangong Aochin's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's body and slowly whispered the name of Bailey Hongzhuang. When you humiliated Nangong Xiujie, you should understand that you have touched the face of the royal family of the Qing dynasty. Nangong Aochin's voice was slightly heavy and his eyes were sharp. The dignity of the royal family could not be tarnished by anyone. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression did not change. Her lips evoked a sarcastic smile. Only the officials are allowed to set the fire, but the people are not allowed to light the lamp. She was no stranger to the royal family's sanctimonious face. Bailey Hongzhuang often faced such tricks in the Fengbo country and had long been accustomed to it. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's undisguised words, Nangong Aochin's face was a bit embarrassed. As everyone knew, Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth. Now with the investigation of the murderer of Nangong Xiujie, it was no longer a secret that Nangong Xiujie and Nangong Yujin molested Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Qinyue in the first pavilion. From the beginning to the end, it was Nangong Xiujie who provoked the cultivators of the Kanglan College, and Bailey Hongzhuang and others were just passively fighting back. However, insulting the dignity of the royal family was insulting the dignity of the royal family. No matter what the reason was, it could not be forgiven. In any case, you should not provoke the dignity of the royal family in the Qing dynasty. Nangong Aochin's voice was slightly cold. Bailey Hongzhuang's words at the moment were already disrespectful. Nangong Oji's dignified face flashed with anger. Today, Nangong Aochin was prepared to use this opportunity to redeem the dignity of the imperial family. It would be fine if Bailey Hongzhuang knew how to adapt to the situation, but Bailey Hongzhuang had such an attitude at this moment, so he couldn't let her go. Nangong Auchen turned his gaze slightly and quietly glanced at Nangong Oji. After seeing Nangong Oji's gaze, he immediately understood. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang clearly felt the killing intent from Nangong Auchen. Her eyes narrowed. Nangong Auchen actually wanted to kill her. Judging from his previous performance, Nangong Auchen didn't have any killing intent towards her, but now he actually revealed killing intent towards her. She was sure that this was Nangong Oji's idea. To some of the self-righteous royal families, a stain was not allowed to exist, and everything she had done must be erased. Perhaps on other occasions, Nangong Auchen was not suitable to do it, but under such circumstances, Nangong Auchen did not have any pressure. Even if he killed Bailey Hongzhuang, he only needed to say that it was a mistake, and everyone who knew the truth would know that this was a demonstration of the royal family. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed coldly. It seemed that the situation was not as simple as everyone thought. This competition was most likely going to be a battle of life and death. Chapter 850. Isn't it just a shitty royal family? Master, let's directly kill Nangong Auchen, the heir of the royal family. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with a cold light. If Nangong Auchen's attitude was good, then it would be fine, but this attitude was simply unforgivable. No matter from which point of view, this matter was Nangong Xiujia's problem and had nothing to do with the master. The royal family even put on such a dignified appearance, it was really disgusting. You can kill him, but you can't kill him in front of everyone. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, her face was covered with frost. She had always been the one who did the first thing, she would do the 15th. Since Nangong Auchen had the heart to kill her, then he should be prepared to be killed by her. It's just that in this royal martial arts arena, under the eyes of everyone, she couldn't do it. Because they were now in the Qing dynasty, once Nangong Auchen fell, the entire Kanglan College would be implicated. If she was alone and left the Qing dynasty, it had nothing to do with her, but the Kanglan College couldn't run away. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her chin slightly and looked at Nangong Auchen coldly. Do it. Since there was no room for maneuver, then let's fight. Nangong Auchen's eyes also showed a touch of coldness. As a member of the royal family, it was necessary for him to erase the existence of all those who insulted the dignity of the royal family. Huan Chuyu and the others' eyes flashed with doubts. Although the matter between Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Xiujia had a certain impact, the atmosphere between the two was too dignified. The battle begins. With the referee's order, Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Auchen stood together. Baisher jumped down from Bailey Hongzhuang's arms, his small body staring at the flame lion beside Nangong Auchen. This damned fellow actually dared to have the intention to kill its master. It would destroy this flaming lion first. Nangong Auchen saw the contract beast in Bailey Hongzhuang's arms, which was only for ornamental purposes, also came to participate in the battle. He couldn't help but feel a little funny. The flaming lion would be able to snap the neck of such a small creature with a single bite. However, he also understood why Bailey Hongzhuang did this. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was going to die, it was useless for the contract beast to not participate in the battle. However, when the onlookers saw the white lion confronting the flaming lion, they could not help but laugh out loud. Haha, this little guy also came to participate in the battle. The blazing lion's body alone is 10 times bigger than it. Are the people from the Azure Water School here to make jokes? If this little guy can withstand a blow from the flaming lion, I will eat this chair. Almost everyone was laughing at him. This was really too embarrassing. Xia Jiqing and the others were also stunned. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was always holding Baisher, they had never seen Baisher fight before. When they thought of the flaming lion's tyrannical power, the white lion would probably die on the stage. They could not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang would do such a thing. Only Mo Yunjue, who was in the stands, had a touch of understanding in his eyes. The power of this little guy was beyond everyone's expectations. You are very aware. Nangong Aochin also had a trace of admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang. Before death, she still did not show any panic, but he did not know if it was because of self-confidence or ignorance. Chapter 851. Nangong Aochin snorted coldly and stepped forward. The elemental energy in his dantian burst out and a tyrannical pressure spread out in an instant. 5th level of the Red Realm. The tyrannical pressure did not hesitate to suppress Bailey Hongzhuang. When he fought with Gong Shaoqing, he did not use his full strength, but when dealing with Bailey Hongzhuang, he wanted to crush Bailey Hongzhuang with a crushing victory. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. After reaching the Xiantian realm, when there was a certain gap in the strength of two practitioners, the pressure of the strong would produce a huge pressure to crush the opponent. Under this pressure, the strength of the weaker side would also be suppressed and could not exert all of their combat power. This was the difficulty of fighting against those of a higher level. Ordinary people could not break through this layer of pressure at all, and all the battles would pale in comparison. Bailey Hongzhuang's speed was also not slow. The elemental energy in her body roared out and the strength of the 3rd level of the Red Realm was fully displayed. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had reached the 3rd level of the Red Realm at her age, they were a little surprised. She was worthy of being called a genius. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Aochin were the same age, they were afraid that her strength would not be weaker than Nangong Aochin's. However, they could only blame Bailey Hongzhuang for being born late. Facing Nangong Aochin's pressure, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that a huge rock was pressing on her body and her combat power was affected to a certain extent. Nangong Aochin looked indifferent. This was the difference between the weak and the strong. There was almost no need to fight, and the weak had already fallen into a deadlock. After seeing the arrogance and pride in Nangong Aochin's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly pulled into a mocking smile. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind moved and a touch of jade color quietly appeared on her arms. It was bright and tough. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's right fist fiercely hit the pressure in the air. Bang! Nangong Aochin's expression changed in an instant as a muffled sound was heard. Gotcha! A slight cracking sound rang out. Immediately after, the pressure dissipated like a broken mirror. Seeing this scene, a hint of surprise appeared in everyone's eyes at the same time. Nangong Aochin's pressure was actually so easily broken by Bailey Hongzhuang. This kind of thing is useless to me, Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. The difference in strength between her and Nangong Aochin was only 2 levels, so this kind of pressure would not have an absolute suppression on her. Nangong Aochin was also a little surprised. Just one fist was enough to shatter the pressure. It could be seen just how powerful Bailey Hongzhuang's fist was. At the same time, a hint of interest appeared in Nangong Aochin's eyes. It was rare for him to meet such an interesting person among the younger generation of cultivators. Immediately after, Nangong Aochin's figure moved and turned into a yellow light that swept toward Bailey Hongzhuang. The distance between the two of them was instantly shortened. Nangong Aochin's right palm turned into a fist and punched toward Bailey Hongzhuang's neck without hesitation. The huge fist wrapped in fierce fist wind rapidly enlarged in Bailey Hongzhuang's pupils. Bailey Hongzhuang did not panic and did not have the slightest intention of dodging. It just so happened that she also wanted to know how strong she was now. Just as the fist was about to touch Bailey Hongzhuang moved. Her thin and white fist met Nangong Aochin without any fear. She actually wanted to meet force with force. Chapter 852. This Bailey Hongzhuang is too arrogant. Does she think that Big Brother's extra strength is just for show? Nangong Yuer's mouth evoked a sarcastic arc, but the smile in her eyes gradually deepened. Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was broken. This was also good news. People from small places are always lacking in knowledge. She really thinks that her strength is great. Nangong Yujin said lazily. Boom. 2 fists, one big and one small, collided in front of everyone's surprised eyes. However, the scene of Bailey Hongzhuang's bones breaking did not happen. The two fists separated as soon as they touched, and Bailey Hongzhuang was not defeated. Feeling the huge power coming from the fist, Nangong Aochin was surprised. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang's strength to be so strong. "I underestimated you," Nangong Aochin said slowly. He wanted to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang in a crushing way, but now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not so easy to deal with. The children of the royal family have always been arrogant. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were not polite at all. Since they were already in a hostile situation, she would not give the other party a good face. Nangong Aochin's face was cold, and his eyes flashed with a touch of anger. His body moved, and he attacked like a storm. Boom, boom, boom. Bailey Hongzhuang did not back down at all. Her figure was fighting with Nangong Aochin. Fierce attacks continued to break out. The two people were like a whirlwind intertwined with each other, and the fierce qi also broke out into bursts of sonic booms. The more they fought, the more surprised Nangong Aochin became. Usually, female cultivators were very weak in close combat, but Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to be affected at all. Her close combat ability was very good. What he could not understand was that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was clearly 2 levels lower than his. Why did he not feel the weakness of Bailey Hongzhuang when they fought? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang practiced a body cultivation technique? Nangong Aochin was a bit puzzled. Although body transformation martial skills weren't rare, there were very few good body transformation martial skills. Bailey Hongzhuang was able to fight someone 2 ranks above her, and she wasn't at a disadvantage in terms of strength. From this, it could be seen that Bailey Hongzhuang's martial skills were of a very high level. It looked like the champion of every academy would not be a nameless person. He could not underestimate his opponent. Whoosh! The two of them bounced back. Bailey Hongzhuang took a few steps back and dissipated all the energy in her body. Nangong Aochin's strength was just like what everyone said, it wasn't a bluff. Even though she had used the jade-refined body, her strength was still somewhat lacking. The difference in strength between the two of them was not small. Under her sleeves, Bailey Hongzhuang's fists were flushed red with blood and were faintly trembling. She could not help but be injured from the previous collision. However, this scene was extremely horrifying in the eyes of everyone. Nangong Yujin's face was filled with disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation is clearly 2 levels lower than Nangong Aochin. How can she still persist under such a violent attack? He was very clear about how strong Nangong Aochin was. There had never been a weak person who could persist for so long under Nangong Aochin's attack. This was too strange. Xia Jiqing and the others' eyes flashed with excitement. Hongzhuang is really great. Chapter 853. Since it's already a fight to the death, then let's end it quickly. The coldness in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually deepened. From this probing exchange, she already had a certain understanding of Nangong Aochin's strength. Although her cultivation wasn't as good as Nangong Aochin, it didn't mean that she didn't have the strength to fight. In her dictionary, there was no such thing as admitting defeat. If she didn't go all out, she would never know the final result. Nangong Aochin's handsome eyes slightly narrowed. In this situation, Bailey Hongzhuang could still say such words. It could be seen that Bailey Hongzhuang was planning to go all out. Since you're so anxious to die, I'll help you. Nangong Aochin's voice was also full of coldness. He couldn't continue to let Bailey Hongzhuang deal with him. He wanted a crushing victory and let everyone know that the dignity of the royal family couldn't be trampled on. On the other side, Baisher turned his head and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang nod, Baisher's eyes fell on the opposite side of the flame lion. However, after seeing Baisher, the originally majestic flame lion's eyes flashed with a trace of fear. Its strong body began to tremble. Seeing this scene, a trace of astonishment appeared in the eyes of everyone present. Why does the flame lion seem to be afraid of that white beast? What kind of beast is that white beast? How come I've never seen it before? Everyone was puzzled. Although there were many kinds of demon beasts, the people present didn't lack in eyesight. They even knew about demon beasts that were ornamental. However, they had never seen a demon beast like Baishur. You're thinking too much. How can the flame lion be afraid of such a small beast? Even more people disagreed. The flame lion was a very extraordinary existence among contract beasts. How could a student from the remote Kanglan school have a contract beast better than the crown prince? Old Huan, what kind of contract beast is Bailey Hongzhuang's? Jian Qingqiu was not a stupid person. The concept of hierarchy among demonic beasts was more strict than that of humans. Low-level demonic beasts would only behave like this when they met higher-level demonic beasts. In the past, they had always treated Bailey Hongzhuang's demonic beast as a pet. But now, it seemed that this white lion was not just for show. Huan Chuyu was also surprised. In fact, he had never paid attention to white lion before. I've never heard of it before, Huan Chuyu said slowly. However, Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi obviously didn't believe what Huan Chuyu said. They only thought that Huan Chuyu was deliberately keeping them in suspense. No matter how strong this demonic beast is, Bailey Hongzhuang is no match for Nangong Aochen. Song Hongxi didn't have any good impression of Jian Qingqiu. Yesterday, Huan Chuyu exposed Wei Hanyun's identity in front of everyone, which made him very embarrassed. Now he only hoped that Kanglan College would fail and fall to the last place. Huan Chuyu looked at Song Hongxi indifferently. At least the students of my Kanglan College have the courage to fight. Unlike you, you don't even have the courage to fight. Seeing that Huan Chuyu's words were getting more and more impolite, Song Hongxi also coldly snorted. You better pray that your Kanglan College's good seedlings don't die on this stage. Huan Chuyu's anger surged, but Song Hongxi had already retracted his gaze. This old guy was getting more and more excessive. Chapter 854. Bailey Hongzhuang and Baishur took action almost immediately. Bailey Hongzhuang's primary energy surged into her fists. At the same time, she used fulgurating shadow and disappeared from the spot like a ghost. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's strange movements, Nangong Aochen's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. His whole body tensed up, and he did not dare to relax even a little bit. Storm break. Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were as swift as the wind. Her martial skill was as fast as lightning as she attacked Nangong Aochen's chest. Nangong Aochen's reaction was also extremely fast. After feeling the fierce wind, he also countered with a martial skill. Dragon Quake Fist. Bang! When the two fists collided, their primary energies cancelled each other out. The level of the Dragon Quake Fist was a level higher than the Storm Break. Therefore, Nangong Aochen had the upper hand in this collision. Nangong Aochen, who was originally slightly nervous, revealed a smile. The foundation of the imperial family was not something that ordinary people could compare with. It was far easier for him to obtain high-level martial skills than other cultivators. A satisfied smile appeared in Nangong Aoji's eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang had been jumping around for so long. It was time to kill her in one fell swoop. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was not too disappointed by the failure of this move. The primary energy in her body surged again. Nangong Aochen's eyes were filled with coldness. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was clearly weaker than his, but she dared to attack him first. This was simply unforgivable. Next, I'll show you the power of the imperial family. Nangong Aochen's brows were even more arrogant. The primary energy in his body surged and gathered on his hands. As Nangong Aochen's hands kept moving, a complicated seal quietly formed. At the same time, a heart-palpitating force spread out from his hands. Demonic palm. As soon as this word came out, a huge palm quickly formed behind Nangong Aochen. The entire sky seemed to be suppressed by this huge primary energy palm. An unspeakable pressure swept through everyone's heart. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on the demonic palm. The same move in the hands of Nangong Aochen and Nangong Xiujie were two completely different concepts. At this moment, Nangong Aochen's demonic palm was almost twice the size of Nangong Xiujie's. This showed that Nangong Aochen's mastery of martial skills was much stronger than Nangong Xiujie's. Big Brother has practiced the demonic palm to this extent. This is too terrifying. Nangong Aochen's face was full of amazement. Nangong Aochen was really worthy of being known as the most talent in the imperial family of the Qin kingdom. Was Nangong Aochen's. Nong Aochen's SS was had a look. Nangong Aochen's. Was royal s was s. Only Nangong Oji had a satisfied look in his eyes. Nangong Aochen was really a gift from the heavens to the Qin kingdom. Whether it was strength, wisdom, or ability, he was one in a million. Huan Chuyu looked at Lu Huayan. The power of this demonic palm was not small. Once Bailey Hongzhuang did not have a strong enough martial skill to deal with it, Bailey Hongzhuang may die on the spot. Obviously, this kind of competition could no longer be stopped. Mo Yunjue's eyes were fixed on the stage. His expression was a little cold, but the primary energy in his body was quietly surging. Chapter 855. Master, this guy's heavenly demon palm is very powerful. You have to be careful. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with worry. It could feel the power of the heavenly demon palm. If the other party was an ordinary cultivator, the master should be able to surpass him. However, Nangong Aochen's cultivation was obviously not simple. Perhaps Nangong Aochen himself also had the ability to fight. As a result, the gap between the master and Nangong Aochen was even greater. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a strong fighting spirit. Until the last moment, they would never know the final result. In the next moment, the power in Bailey Hongzhuang's body also surged wildly. Her hands were constantly turning, and a similarly terrifying energy burst out. Sacred Azure Flame Palm. Bailey Hongzhuang snorted coldly, and a huge Yuanli palm also appeared in the air, and a blazing blue flame covered the whole palm. The temperature of the entire martial arts field also rose a bit, and a scorching temperature was spreading. Looking at the sacred azure flame palm, those who had seen the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Xiujie were no stranger to it. In the beginning, Bailey Hongzhuang defeated Nangong Xiujie with this sacred azure flame palm, but Nangong Xiujie's mastery of the heavenly demon palm was not comparable to Nangong Aochen's. At this moment, it was a bit whimsical to use this trick to block the heavenly demon palm. Country people are country people. The moves they have mastered are so few. No matter how many moves they want to have, they have no more. Nangong Yuer's lips were slightly curved, and she looked at Xia Jiqing and the others mockingly. They had been born in two different worlds. There was a touch of anger on the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others, but there was a bit of helplessness in their hearts. In fact, the heritage of ordinary people could not be compared with the royal family. Old Huan, your Kanglan College can't even teach a decent martial art to the students? It's very difficult to rely on one move to conquer the world. Song Hongxi seized the opportunity to ridicule him. Jian Qingqiu's face also showed a smile. This was the foundation of the royal family. With such an existence, it was impossible for Kanglan College to turn the tables. However, Huan Chuyu was too lazy to pay attention to Song Hongxi. It wasn't that Songlan College didn't have any martial arts to teach students. It was just that Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't been in Songlan College for long. With the power of your azure flame's sacred palm, you are destined to fail. Nangong Aochen's eyes were filled with disdain. He could already predict the outcome before the two attacks collided because the gap between the two attacks was too big. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly curled into a devilish and enchanting arc. That's not necessarily true. Suddenly, everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang flip her palm again, and her face paled slightly. Just when everyone didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing, Bailey Hongzhuang's hands suddenly clasped together, and the cyan palm suspended in the air suddenly shrank a little. Seeing this scene, Nangong Aochen's pupils shrank, and his serious and cold face was filled with disbelief. As the cyan palm shrank, the temperature increased again, and the whole palm became more and more dazzling. Even the brilliance of the sun was completely blocked. Chapter 856. For a martial skill, enlarging it was not the most difficult. However, shrinking it was the most difficult. Once the martial skill was shrunk, the energy of the martial skill would be more condensed and the power of the martial skill would be greatly improved. However, the difficulty of this was simply indescribable. If his perception was not wrong, this blue flame sacred palm should be a martial skill at the early stage of the profound rank. It was too difficult to shrink it. He did not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang did it. Not only Nangong Aochen, but the onlookers were also horrified at this moment. This technique was really amazing. Xia Jiqing and the others were stunned. It seemed that what they knew before was not the true strength of Hongzhuang. No wonder when Nangong Xiujie was injured like that, Hongzhuang was only slightly injured. If Hongzhuang had used this technique, Nangong Xiujie would only have a dead end. There were obviously a lot of people who understood this point. For a time, many people changed their views of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was merciful to Nangong Xiujie, but now Nangong Aochen had the idea of killing Bailey Hongzhuang. Comparing the two, everyone could not help but feel that the royal family was too narrow-minded, but they did not dare to say such words. How did you do it? Nangong Aochen could not help but ask. If this technique was used in battle, the eruption of combat power could be increased by more than one level. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, and a touch of ridicule appeared in her calm eyes. Why should I tell you? This Nangong Aochen was used to being aloof, and even this question had a condescending tone. Others cared about the identity of the crown prince, but she did not care at all. Hearing this, Nangong Aochen's expression changed a bit. At this moment, he did not want to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. This woman had such a magical method in her hands. If he kidnapped her back to the royal family and learned the method from her mouth, it would be of great help to him. However, it was a pity that she couldn't go against her father's orders. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Aochen were confronting each other, Baisher had already pounced towards the flame lion like lightning. A dog fart lion was actually in the limelight in front of everyone, and it, the Grand Beast King, was actually ridiculed by everyone as a useless little thing. This was simply unforgivable. The flaming lion had always been treated like a prince by the royal family. Although it felt an indescribable fear towards the white lion, it had followed its arrogant master for so long that it really thought of itself as someone important. It actually charged towards the white lion as well. When everyone saw the white lion overestimating itself and attacking the flame lion, they all revealed expressions of pity and ridicule. This little fellow was overestimating itself just like its owner. However, in the next instant a shocking scene occurred. Roar! White lion roared angrily, and the flaming lion's attitude clearly changed. Even when the two demonic beasts were about to attack, White Lion's movements were as fast as lightning. With a leap, he bit down on the flaming lion's throat with the speed of a storm. Since they dared to provoke the Beast King, they should pay a sufficient price. Two figures, one red and one white, crossed each other, and blood sprayed in the air. Chapter 857. The audience was silent. Everyone looked at this scene with a dumbfounded expression. Wasn't this too unbelievable? The majestic and renowned flaming lion actually had its throat bitten by that little white beast in just a single exchange. What kind of beast was this little white beast? Haha, what kind of broken flame lion is this? It's too funny to be praised by everyone with this little bit of fighting power. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but laugh. Everyone had praised the flame lion before, and Nangong Aochen also regarded the flame lion as a treasure, but it was so easily defeated. The imperial family had spent so much money and effort to cultivate such a useless demonic beast? However, when Xia Jiqing chuckled, Gong Shaoqing and the others did not laugh. Their eyes all fell on the white lion. It seemed that they had always underestimated the white lion. I knew that Hong Zhuang's contracted beast would definitely not be a demonic beast that is just for show. Cui Haoyan sighed, but there was still an unspeakable shock in his heart. When they first learned that Bailey Hongzhuang had contracted such a beast, they felt that it was incredible. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang had never been a flashy person. This kind of ornamental demonic beast was something that the young ladies of the government officials' families, who didn't have strong combat strength, liked to keep. But to cultivators, this kind of demonic beast was completely a burden. Everything that they did not understand before was suddenly understood after seeing the white lion's attack. This white lion was simply pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Like contracted beast. This white lion's fighting power is as abnormal as its master. Bai Junyu shook his head speechlessly. Fortunately, he and Bailey Hongzhuang were teammates. Otherwise, it would be too miserable to offend such an opponent. Gong Shaoqing took a deep breath and calmed the shock in his heart. The flame lion was at the 5th level of the Red Realm, which proved that the cute little beast that had always been inconspicuous was at least at the 5th level of the Red Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang was really against the heavens. Nangong Yuer and the others were dumbfounded. They knew how strong the flaming lion was. It was at the 5th level of the Red Realm, and it was even stronger than the ordinary cultivators at the 5th level of the Red Realm. But in just a few moments, the flame lion was only left with half a life. What kind of contract beast did Bailey Hongzhuang have? Nangong Aochen's face turned ashen when he saw the flame lion lying on the ground. He had formed a contract with the flaming lion when he was very young. The flaming lion had accompanied him as he grew up. In his heart, the flaming lion held an extremely important position. He had even treated the flaming lion as his family. White Lion chewed on the flaming lion's flesh and swallowed it into its stomach. It enjoyed being the center of attention. Now, everyone should know what the white lion was capable of. The next moment, the white lion leaped towards the flaming lion again. The meat of the flaming lion tasted pretty good. Woo-woo! When the flaming lion saw White Lion charging at it again, a trace of panic appeared in its eyes. It was no match for White Lion. Seeing White Lion's action, Nangong Aochen shouted, "Beast, how dare you!" However, White Lion obviously did not care about Nangong Aochen's words. It leaped and opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth, and bit the neck of the flaming lion again. Chapter 858. However, just as Nangong Aochen was about to attack White Lion, Bailey Hongzhuang had already blocked in front of Nangong Aochen. "Your opponent is me." Compared to Nangong Aochen, who was full of anger, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed very indifferent. For this kind of arrogant guy, he should use facts to let him understand that there was always someone better than him. Go to hell. Nangong Aochen could no longer control his emotions at this moment and did not hesitate to attack Bailey Hongzhuang with the demonic palm. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind moved and the sacred azure flame palm met it. Just as the two attacks collided, White Lion had successfully bitten off the neck of the flaming lion. It was not difficult to kill this kind of guy. Nangong Aoji's eyes were also full of anger, but as the king of the Qing dynasty, he could not show this point. However, this Bailey Hongzhuang must die. Bang! The two attacks collided in front of the horrified eyes of the crowd. At the moment of impact, a thunderous sound broke out and it was very terrifying. A ripple of elemental energy that was visible to the naked eye spread out, covering the sky as if the whole sky had darkened. At the moment when the two attacks broke out, the protective shield around the martial arts stage was instantly activated. A layer of pale golden protective shield enveloped the entire martial arts stage, preventing the energy from leaking out and affecting the cultivators in the stands. The elemental energy storm swept through the protective shield, But the crowd could no longer see the situation inside the shield, and did not know what the result was. Outside the protective shield, White Lion was looking inside the shield with the head of the flaming lion in its mouth. When the collision broke out, the owner let it leave the martial arts stage. After all, with such an energy storm, it would only be affected if it stayed inside. Although the area of the martial arts stage was still not small, it was still somewhat inferior when used for the collision of the energy of Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Aochen. However, when the crowd saw White Lion holding the head of the flaming lion in its mouth, they all felt a little mocking. As for the person who had said that as long as the White Lion could withstand one attack from the flaming lion, he had already maintained his silence. He only hoped that no one would remember what he had said earlier. Nangong Oji's hand was tightly pressed on his knee. His dignified face released the might of the Son of Heaven. Anyone could tell that Nangong Oji's mood was very bad. Huan Chuyu and the rest stared intently at the stage. The battle had erupted to such an extent that they were unable to make any judgment. Worry appeared in everyone's eyes. No one knew who was stronger in this clash. Logically speaking, Nangong Aochen should have the upper hand. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's move of shrinking the azure flame sacred palm was a little shocking. Therefore, they were unable to determine the power of the azure flame sacred palm after shrinking. Will Hongzhuang be okay? Xia Jiqing's hands were entwined together as she stared at the stage. This kind of energy was really terrifying. If she was the one in the middle of such an energy storm, it would be very difficult for her to survive. I believe that Hongzhuang will be fine, Zhang Yunfeng said in a deep voice. She believed in Hongzhuang's strength. Although Nangong Aochen's strength was very strong, in terms of Bailey Hongzhuang's combat power, even if she was defeated, she should not be in danger. Chapter 859. When the energy storm dissipated, the protective shield gradually receded, and the situation on the battle stage also fell into the eyes of everyone. It was just that when everyone saw the situation on the battle stage, they couldn't help but gasp. There was a huge hole in the battle stage that was built with hard rock. The surroundings of the hole were also filled with cracks. It was obvious that the two attacks had caused a great deal of destruction. They saw that Nangong Aochen's pale yellow clothes were stained with blood, and the luxurious brocade robe also had some tears. The jade crown was slightly tilted, and his hair was a little messy. His hands were trembling slightly, and his face was very ugly. When the people of the Qing dynasty saw Nangong Aochen's appearance, their faces showed an incredible look. They have never seen Nangong Aochen in such a sorry state. Even if Nangong Aochen fought on normal days, he would crush his opponents with absolute strength. But now, in the hands of such a cultivator who was 2 levels weaker than him, Nangong Aochen actually became like this. It was too shocking. Turning their line of sight slightly, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's situation was also very bad. Her white dress bloomed with flowers of blood, and a bloody smell quietly permeated the air. At this moment, her black hair was scattered, and her pretty face was a little pale. After the black hair poured down, Bailey Hongzhuang looked even more beautiful. On the left side of Bailey Hongzhuang's ribs, blood was slowly flowing out, but Bailey Hongzhuang's face did not change in the slightest. Nangong Aochen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang like this, and his mood changed a little. Previously, he only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was good, but he did not really treat Bailey Hongzhuang as an opponent. But at this moment, after seeing the real strength of Bailey Hongzhuang, he also felt the horror of Bailey Hongzhuang. With the cultivation of the 3rd level of the Red Realm, she could make him fall into such a situation. If Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation reached the 5th level of the Red Realm, he was afraid that the one who would be crushed would be him. Thinking of this, the killing intent in Nangong Aochen's heart became stronger. As a member of the royal family, he clearly understood how terrible an opponent like Bailey Hongzhuang would be when she grew up. If Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't his opponent, then it would be fine. But since Bailey Hongzhuang was already fighting to the death with him, then today he absolutely couldn't let Bailey Hongzhuang walk down the stage alive. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. At this moment, everyone held their breath and no longer dared to ridicule Bailey Hongzhuang. Because Bailey Hongzhuang had already shown her ability with her actions, she could still achieve such a result in fighting against Nangong Aochen. She was worthy of being called a combat genius. Gong Shaoqing and others were full of shock. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had reached such a level. Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi looked at each other. They were speechless that there was such an abnormal person like Bailey Hongzhuang in the Kanglan College. How could this Bailey Hongzhuang have such amazing achievements in every aspect at such a young age? Nangong Aochen's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. I admit that you are very strong, but your cultivation is your weakness. Maybe after a while I will not be your opponent, but at least for now you can't beat me. Chapter 860. When Nangong Aochen personally admitted the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang, the amazement in everyone's eyes was even more intense. This had already proved the excellence of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Aochen coldly. This guy's strength was indeed not weak. It's meaningless to just talk about it, Lin Feng said with a smile. Nangong Aochen's mouth curved into a smile. You are already seriously injured, you can't be my opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang's ribs were already broken. If she continued to fight, Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to play her level at all. It was just that Bailey Hongzhuang was not willing to admit it. If you have the ability, come at me. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, countless shocked eyes condensed on her body. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang still wanted to continue fighting? If she wasn't careful, Bailey Hongzhuang would have to leave her little life on the martial arts stage. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a bit of ridicule. Nangong Aochen thought that he had the upper hand, but now his internal organs should be burning like fire. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but look at Lu Huayan. Teacher Lu, can Hongzhuang continue to fight like this? Lu Huayan's expression was also somewhat complicated. According to the rules of the finals, as long as the student did not admit defeat, they could not stop this competition. I believe that Bailey Hongzhuang has a sense of propriety, Lu Huayan slowly said. Xia Jiqing also fell into silence. She was very worried about Bailey Hongzhuang's safety, but she also understood that the possibility of Bailey Hongzhuang admitting defeat was very small. Although Nangong Aochen was usually a gentleman, when the dignity of the royal family was challenged, this guy did not have the attitude of a gentleman at all. In her view, this group of people from the royal family of the Qing dynasty were well-deserved villains. Baisher threw down the head of the blazing lion and immediately jumped onto the stage. The head of the blazing lion rolled until it reached the spectators' stand where Nangong Oe was sitting. Although this was White Lion's unintentional action, in the eyes of the crowd, this was a mockery towards Nangong Oji. Nangong Oji's gaze paused on the head of the flaming lion for a moment, but his expression did not change. With just a glance, the members of the imperial family beside him stood up. This little white beast has already left the stage. This proves that it no longer has the qualifications to continue fighting. This is a fair competition, the white little beast can no longer fight. As soon as the royal family member finished speaking, everyone present looked at each other. Usually, this rule only applied to cultivators. It didn't have much binding effect on contracted beasts. In many cases, contracted beasts would continue to fight. However, it wasn't unreasonable for the imperial family to bring up this rule at this moment. The royal family of the Qing dynasty is too shameless. Bai Junyu's face was stained with a trace of anger. Originally, as long as Baisher was on the stage, with his strength, the possibility of winning this competition was almost certain. Who would have thought that the royal family would bring up such a rule? This was really shameless to the extreme. I was wondering why Lingyin College was able to get first place in the college tournament in the past few years. Turns out that they relied on this shameless method. Chapter 861. Even the people of the Qing dynasty fell into silence at this moment. Although they also knew that the Qing dynasty's approach was a bit excessive, the emperor was here. They did not dare to say anything unless they were tired of living. Huan Chuyu frowned slightly and said, "The battle of contract beasts has never been limited to the location. This statement is a bit unreasonable. Usually, when a contracted beast participated in a competition, because the cultivator's battle range was quite wide, the battle between the demonic beasts would not affect the cultivator as much as possible. It was also a common thing for the demonic beasts to appear outside of the martial arts stage. Jian Qingqiu had already understood after noticing the look of the members of the royal family. In this battle, no matter what, Nangong Aochen must win. As the crown prince of the Qing dynasty, Nangong Aochen's identity was different from ordinary cultivators. Today, he had to win no matter what, because he represented the crown prince of the Qing dynasty. The reason why Nangong Oji let Nangong Aochen participate this time was to let everyone know the strength of Nangong Aochen. If Nangong Aochen failed today, it would be a huge damage to his reputation. Lingyin College was attached to the royal family of the Qing dynasty. Naturally, the orders of Nangong Oji could not be ignored. Jian Qingqiu quickly recovered his dignified look. Old Huan, the competition between cultivators is limited to the platform. Once the cultivator falls outside the platform, it will be judged as a failure. This is naturally the case for the contract beast. Jian Qingqiu said slowly, but his eyes were looking at Song Hongxi. Song Hongxi immediately understood and nodded. Yes, what Principal Jian said is reasonable. Huan Chuyou's face was gloomy in an instant. These two old guys were too shameless. There has never been such a rule in the previous academy exchange gatherings. Aren't you going too far? Huan Chuyu stood up. His vicissitudes and kind face was full of anger. Since coming to Lingyin College, Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi had already made it unbearable for him. Now Bailey Hongzhuang was fighting to this extent, just for the honor of Kanglin College. He had endured the previous things, but this matter was related to Bailey Hongzhuang. He could no longer do nothing. When Huan Chuyu stood up, the spectators were in an uproar. As the vice principal of Kanglin College, he had already stated that the competition was unfair. Everyone's eyes fell on Nangong Oji. They didn't know what the emperor thought about this. When Xia Jiqing and the others saw Huan Chuyou's protest, their hearts were filled with excitement. At the very least, this proved that the vice principal was on the side of the students. Jian Qingqiu and Jian Qinyu didn't think that Huan Chuyu would suddenly shed all pretense of cordiality. Logically speaking, in such a situation, Huan Chuyu should have no choice but to swallow his anger. But what was wrong with Huan Chuyu? Flames of fury burned in Huan Chuyou's eyes. When he saw that one of the academy's students had suffered a huge blow and the other was heavily injured because of this so-called academy exchange, he suddenly didn't understand why he had been so persistent all these years. The existence of the Kanglin College was to train students, and the purpose of the college tournament was to promote the motivation of the students' cultivation. Chapter 862. Instead of participating in such a college tournament for the sake of benefits, it was better to give up. Kanglin College could be established on their own. As long as they did not compete, what did it matter? They were not with Lingyin College and Beihai College, so why should they care so much? At this moment, Huan Chuyu had already understood everything. Everything was for the sake of the students. He would not continue to tolerate these little tricks of Lingyin College. Old Huan, what are you doing? This is the rule of the college tournament. Jian Qingqiu was a little anxious. In front of so many people, he did not understand what was wrong with Huan Chuyu. What rule? In my opinion, as long as it is beneficial to Lingyin College, it is the rule. Huan Chuyou's voice was cold. Kanglin College had endured time and time again in exchange for Lingyin College and Beihai College's demand. But now, he would no longer endure. As the voice of Huan Chuyu fell, everyone's face changed. The vice principal of Kanglan College was really going all out this time. The vice principal is really domineering. Xia Jiqing's eyes flashed with excitement. No matter what the result of this college tournament was, the vice principal was her idol. Not afraid of power and prioritizing the interests of the students, such a mentor was really rare. The faces of Bai Junyu and the rest also flashed with a strong sense of excitement. This feeling was really too crazy. However, they were so hot-blooded and impulsive. Even the vice principal was doing this. What were they afraid of? Old Huan, what's wrong with you? There are so many people watching now. Jian Qingqiu's face completely changed. Although he had long disliked Kanglan College, they had always been at odds. At least on the surface, they had not fallen out. However, now that Huan Chuyu did not give him face, it was obvious that he was going to completely fall out. Huan Chuyu's eyes were cold and his attitude was firm. My words are here. Jian Qingqiu's face became ugly. He did not expect Huan Chuyu to be so ignorant. He openly provoked the royal family of the Qing dynasty. This was asking for trouble. Nangong Oji's eyes also changed a bit. His eyes were full of coldness as he looked at Huan Chuyu. In the next instant, the members of the royal clan were already standing behind Huan Chuyu. From the looks of it, if Huan Chuyu dared to utter a single word of dissatisfaction, the royal clan would use force to deal with him. At the same time, Xia Jiqing and the others were also surrounded by the royal family. Obviously, they were being held hostage. For a moment, everyone's face changed. The royal family of the Qing dynasty was blatantly threatening them. However, they still didn't dare to say anything. They didn't expect the imperial family to use such a method to help Nangong Aochen win. At this moment, even the expressions of the cultivators of Beihai College changed. The royal family of the Qing dynasty was really terrifying. If he wasn't careful, he might lose his life here. After all, this was the Qing dynasty. Huan Chuyu's face suddenly changed. He wanted to say something, but after seeing that Xia Jiqing and the others were also surrounded, he couldn't say anything. This was the imperial city of the Qing dynasty. As long as the royal family took action, it would be impossible for them to leave the Qing dynasty. Headmaster Jian, you're really something.